So if each of you could just kind of go through what you did last summer. I know a lot of the M1s were able to look at the research document that you guys sent out, listing some of the summer experiences and some of your feedback from them. But if each of you could just kind of go through, introduce yourself, and then say what you did last summer and like just give a brief overview of what it was like. So Yuri, you're in the top of my screen. Can we start with you?
Hi, I'm Yuri, like you said. So last summer I did the Robert Wood Summer Immersion Program. Um, and you guys will, I don't know if you've gotten it already, but the applications will be out probably soon or something. But it was a 1 week program and we got to follow Robert Wood, ortho faculty and residents, just basically kind of like a day-to-day life um, exposure and things like that. So that was my summer experience, and I can talk more about that.
Linda, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda. So like Yuri, I also did the OSIG summer immersion program for 1 week. I also participated in the summer research program through RWJ, but I didn't end up doing ortho research. So I did research with the plastic surgery department. And I also, spent time, I went home, I traveled a little bit to like DC and Maryland. And then I also was like obviously heavily involved in orientation and the white coat ceremony. So I kind of did a little bit of different things throughout my summer.
All right, Nicole, can you go now?
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole. Last summer I did the Jersey City Medical Center research program, and that was basically like an in-person program every day. You go in and you do chart review, but you also do get some face time and exposure with the residents. We were invited to all the fracture conferences and the grand rounds, and then Fridays were our surgery shadowing days. So it was a good mix of everything. And like Linda, I also did have a nice summer where I traveled and relaxed. So, you could do it all.
All right, I see Evan next.
Hi, I'm Evan. Like Linda and Yuri also did the summer immersion program through RWJ. And then aside from that, I just did a little bit of research on my own, just continuing on some projects that were started earlier in the year.
All right, and then I think the last one, Kike.
Hi, sorry, I'm just getting home, but yes, my name is Kike, and I did the NYU Summer Ortho Externship Program. I was with a hand surgeon, and I had a variety of things going on. Like I did some research on Dupuytren's disease. We also had weekly lectures, so we were learning about ortho. And there are also some fun things on the side just for us to do skills workshop and get to know some of the residents and the faculty. And then I also had time to do other things like other people were saying, like I traveled, I went to Grenada, and went to some states nearby. But yeah, that was my summer.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for kind of sharing that overview. So I think we put together a list of questions, especially some that were submitted by M1s. And I think one question that was kind of brought up was what were like your thought processes in terms of planning for your summer? I know some of you mentioned did research, some of you traveled, some of you did more of like a clinical shadowing program. So if anyone talk about like what they prioritized and what they thought about when they were planning their summer.
Um, so for me, I kind of prioritized staying in the area. Also, I forgot to mention, I put it in the chat, but I did the Robert Wood training program, and I did it with Dr. Gat. So it was in the ortho department, so I could talk more about that. But yeah, so when I was planning my summer, I did everything with Robert Wood. Like sure, I applied to like other things, but once I got the immersion program and like once I started doing research with the ortho department here, I was like, I think I'm just gonna stick in the area, save on like living costs and like transport costs. So that was like my priority, and like that's how I strategized how I would want to spend the summer. I wanted a good mix of research and clinical exposure just because at the time, and kind of like still now, but at the time I wasn't sure if I was interested in it. I definitely wanted to shadow in it and to see what it was about because I did like the idea of being a surgeon because I like my surgery shadowing and other things. So I was like let me try this out. So just having like a consistent research and clinical experience in the same thing, that was what I was like prioritizing. So yeah, that's why I did the summer immersion program, which was clinical ortho, and then I did the summer training program in the ortho department, which was like more research and academic.
I can go next. So I think I started thinking about my summer probably about around this time right now, which I'm assuming many of you guys are also doing. I prioritized wanting to have time to go home and like relax. I think you'll hear from a lot of upperclassmen that this is your last summer to really do anything productive, whatever that means to you. It could mean research, it could mean doing a shadowing program. It could also mean just like actually not doing anything school related and really just enjoying your summer, which I know a lot of our classmates did. So don't think that that's not an option if you are thinking about that. But so I wanted to make sure that whatever I had planned for the summer could allow for me to also do other things. So that's a lot of like a large reason why I did the summer research program at Robert Wood because I wanted to also do research, but I think in terms of wanting to be flexible with your plans, it's really doable. You can do the research program and still do other stuff. And then I think the ortho program here at Robert Wood is also great because it's short. I wish it was longer, but I think in that sense, you only need to commit 1 week of your time, and it's right at the beginning of the summer, and then you have the rest of the summer off to either continue building those connections that you made with the ortho department, or doing other things like research or traveling or what have you. So I think it's just important to kind of figure out what do you want out of your summer and what do you think is going to be the most productive for you, and then there are like so many other options that can kind of make that you can use to like fit into what you want.
So for me, I really wanted to prioritize getting a lot of research done. And like Linda said, like a productive summer for me was to just, get as much as I could out and published. And because I didn't really have much research experience going into medical school, and it was a bit slow. I started off a bit slow, like I wasn't a, M1 who got research in September, so I just wanted to get as much research done as possible, but also still have time to see friends and have a life. So I did want to stay pretty local, and Jersey City, that area has always been local to me. So yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing was I wanted something where I get a good idea of what it's like to be a resident. Through OSIG, there's a lot of opportunities that you can shadow, whether it's clinic or OR, which is good experience. But there's not many opportunities that we have throughout the curriculum until obviously you get into clinicals to live that life and see what it's like. Because it's, the thing for me, I didn't want to get to third year, do my ortho elective, and then be like, wow, this sucks. Like I can't do this for 2 weeks. I can't imagine doing this for 5 years. So I think doing something clinical is a great use of time to understand what it's, at least get a glimpse of what it's like to be a resident and be like, is this something I can see myself doing for the next 5 years, and then obviously beyond as an attending. But that was the biggest thing for me, and it's great. That program's great because unlike most of them they're short, so you still get to enjoy some of your summer.
And then for me, I wanted to be in New York. Before coming to New Jersey, I was living in New York and I kind of liked the life and missed some of my friends. So I thought it would be a cool way to stay connected by just doing a program there. So I had actually gotten into 2 programs that were based in New York, but I ended up choosing the ortho one. The other one was for emergency med. And with choosing a program, I wanted something that gave me the opportunity to really like explore the specialty, so have that clinical experience and also get something out of it with research. So the NYU program was really great because I got both, and I was able to develop long-standing relationships, so I still keep in touch, and there's still a lot of opportunities ongoing. So I think that's also, at least for me, was really important to look into, was, so, you know, maintaining these relationships. Finally, like, yeah, this was our last summer, so I wanted to have at least a week or something to travel, which I also got. So it was kind of just a well-rounded summer overall.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I know Linda touched on this a little bit, but can anyone talk about their timeline in terms of like figuring out summer plans? I know that some programs like have applications that are submitted super early. And then we're going to learn about the RWJ Ortho Immersion program at an event in like a week or two. But how do you kind of balance those competing timelines with things like the orientation like program or like other summer research projects you were planning?
Is the question about application deadlines or managing?
Yeah, just like how did you kind of manage like preparing for the summer? Were you thinking about it like now, or did you like, and then what did you like prioritize in terms of like you don't hear back from certain things for a couple of months or weeks? Did you apply to like multiple things and then turn them down and kind of that managing that process?
Well, I just started thinking about it, I think a little before winter break. Um, and at that point, like I only realized like I don't know if you guys know Nth Dimensions. It's another program. Wish I could have applied to that, but at that point I was too late. So hopefully you guys knew about that beforehand. I heard it was such a good one. But I started thinking about it before winter break, and then I looked at just like websites and just looked up, you know, programs. And I think I applied to like three. Um, I think I applied to three, including the Robert Wood one. Um, so I don't know. I tried to apply to a few, not too much, because I also like didn't need to do anything that summer. Like I was thinking like, oh, if I didn't get into these, I'm fine with just spending the summer and like enjoying it and whatever. So that's how I went into it. And in that way, like managing deadlines and things like that was easier too, because I didn't apply to a bunch. Uh, I hope that answers the question. Like that's how I managed the deadlines, and that's when I started thinking about it. Waiting to hear back was the easy part. Like you just submit it and you just forget about it. And whoever gets, you know, whoever accepts you, you just go. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel
I think, oh, go ahead, TK.
yeah, okay. I mean, I would say the same thing. Like, I think it's really a good idea to start early because, you know, have your applications in sooner and make sure you have your eyes open. You see all of the opportunities available. If you start a little bit late, you'll see these deadlines pass and be like, darn, I missed it. But you don't want to do that. So go ahead and make your list and start applying. And I just listed the ones that I really wanted and then went down and prioritized that. And if I had time, I would apply for another and another. But I think I ultimately just applied to two because I think that if those ones didn't work out, then I would just do research at Rutgers, which is also a really great opportunity. So there's options out there.
Oh, I would just say, I think this is where your, list of priorities really comes into play. Like, I think you should consider like what are non-negotiables, something that you absolutely want to do. So for me, it was orientation, which I know is, I mean, it's not like really research related, but I really wanted to be a part of orientation. So unfortunately, for a lot of the other outside programs, those they were scheduled to go through August, which was like beyond our summer and into our second year of medical school. So I did apply to one, but I think it limited me because I knew I needed to be back here by mid-July. With that being said, like I was grateful enough to like gotten a smaller experience at RWJ, which for me was just like was plenty and was sufficient enough. And I think if research is something that you absolutely want to do, I might not 100% recommend the summer research program here because it's not always guaranteed that it'll be the most productive. I think you'll hear mixed reviews from people who do it. Some people got a lot done and some people couldn't really do a lot because it requires IRB approval, which you won't really get in the 5 weeks that you're a part of the program. So just also something to consider when you're thinking about research programs for the summer.
Like Yuri, I actually also started thinking about my summer sometime around winter break, maybe a little bit before winter break. I just heard a lot of the upperclassmen, ask me, "Oh, what are you doing for the summer?" And I was kind of like, I didn't know I had to be thinking about that already. So I just did a quick Google search, looked at programs in the area, made an Excel sheet with deadlines and just filled them out. If I didn't miss a deadline, great. If I did, oh well, on to the next one. And I think by like February or March, I had decided that I would do this program. So I think I figured out my summer plans pretty early on.
Yeah, I think I just reiterate what everyone said. Like now is definitely, if you haven't started looking, I would definitely start looking because some of those deadlines can start closing up on you quick. And it'll just limit what you're able to do. But yeah, if you're not able to do something, it's not the end of the world. This is not like a make or break thing. If you have an opportunity and you can do it, great. If you can't and you get to go enjoy 6, 8 weeks, however long summer is, then do that. It's really not a make or break thing to do something this summer, but really like one of the few opportunities we'll have. So if you can take advantage, great. If not, I wouldn't sweat it.
Awesome, thank you. And then more of a logistical question. I know some of the like summer research programs or summer experiences require a letter of recommendation. How'd you go about like thinking about that? Obviously, with M1, like you might have connections from before coming to medical school, but obviously with like M1 year, like you're having a lot of different like course like professors and facilitators. So who did you kind of reach out to get those letters of recommendation?
I have an answer to that, but also I just wanted to briefly add on the last point. If you guys are overwhelmed with deadlines and things like that, I highly recommend cold emailing people from different institutions because that's what I did too. Just because doing things at Robert Wood kind of allowed my schedule to be flexible. I had a lot of free time. Um, so I cold emailed, and that doesn't require like a letter of rec, that doesn't involve a deadline, doesn't involve an application. Um, so for instance, I cold emailed someone I met through the Perry Initiative at Jeff. And she responded and I got to shadow her for a day and got to meet some attendings and now I do like research with them. So it's like it's what you make of it. And if you don't get a program or anything like that, like you always have cold emailing. And people are more kind than you think. Like they're way more open and yeah, sure they're busy, but taking the initiative to email goes a long way. So even if you don't get anything, don't be discouraged. There's always the old-fashioned method. I do have an answer to what you were talking about with letter of rec and stuff like that. That was basically the answer. I applied to things that didn't really involve that. I didn't know anyone. Like during M1 year, I was just studying. I didn't go to class. I didn't go to in-person lectures, so I didn't know the professors. But if you do need rec letters, I think the best place to go to is either one of the deans, Dr. Weber. Dr. Weber will literally write you a rec, even if you don't know him, because he's like, I'm there for you. And then your PDP facilitator, because even if you don't like know the person, like you guys have interacted. So I think those three sources are really great if you don't know, if you haven't like made any faculty connections deliberately. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I kind of like just with simple things like going to office hours and such, or like sending emails and just talking to the professors, I started building relationships. And then kind of inherently with the stuff that I'm involved in, I have like a lot of relationships with admin. But Dr. Weber was one of the people that I asked, and he wrote like an excellent recommendation for me. So I think he's definitely a good person to go to. Someone who's also really nice, Dr. Enfield. She's really sweet and would definitely write one for you. And I don't know if this will work well for every interest group, but every interest group I believe, has an advisor. So if you guys have like a relatively close relationship, or you think that they could speak to your character or something, then maybe that could be another person to reach out to for a recommendation.
Awesome. Oh, Nicole, if you want to
I
add.
was just gonna say, I asked my PDP facilitator for recommendation for a program. And he got it to me pretty quickly. And then I also asked like a surgeon I used to shadow when I was in college for a letter of rec, and that was still acceptable. So
The next kind of question we're just going to jump into was regarding like logistics and cost and funding for the summer. I know that the RWJ like research program has some people can get a stipend through that. Some of the summer programs have a stipend, but does anyone have like any advice or like external funding that they used in terms of like funding their summer, or do they mainly go through like the options that were available at RWJ?
my program did have a stipend, so that was a big plus too. And I also just budgeted like my loans to cover, gas for driving to Jersey City, and those were really that was basically the biggest cost. And then the program also gave us like food vouchers for the day, so that was a big plus. I'm sure other programs did that as well for other students.
I feel like that's a huge perk of doing a program that's not Rutgers affiliated. You'll be able to get money, some kind of stipend. Yeah, the Robert Wood training program isn't associated with a stipend, but if you do the fellowship program, you do get a stipend. So if you want to stay at Robert Wood and do research there and you want to get paid, you should look into the fellowship option, but that requires you to have a proposal and like a project ahead of time. So you have to think about that. Um, yeah, and like I said, I prioritized spending the least amount of money that summer, so I stayed here.
That kind of segues right into one of the other questions we got regarding like summer programs that involve a lot of research. So for those who did summer research here, how did you go about, or here or anywhere else, how did you go about like finding a project or proposing a project idea, especially considering like the constraints of summer only being like 6 to 8 weeks?
I can talk about the RWJ summer program. I think the good thing about that is there's two options. There's the training program or the fellowship program. And the fellowship program requires you to have a project and a mentor in mind. So if there's someone that you've been working on during your M1 year, or possibly even before that you want to start a project with, that'd be a great option. The training program is great for people who actually have like zero to very little experience or want to do research but don't have a mentor. The thing with that is you kind of enter, they can't guarantee you a certain mentor in a specific department, but they're pretty good about matching you with your interests. So obviously surgery was on my list. So I ended up in the plastic surgery department. And I think it really depends in terms of the timeline of getting research done. It depends on one, the types of projects that they have available for you to work on and where in the timeline they are. I know a handful of people had a project that still needed IRB approval. Like I said before, that obviously takes a long time and you probably won't get any real data collected or anything. But I think for the purposes of the research program, it's fine. And if you end up in a project like that, that's obviously something that you should continue on into your second year. And I think that's another great reason why a lot of people do the program is because, you start this relationship, you start research, and depending on where you are, if you are able to complete one, maybe they'll have another project ready for you. Or if you start one and can't finish it by the end of the summer, it's something that you can continue as an M2, M3, M4, etc. So that's kind of how it is with the Robert Wood summer program.
So I also did that program, but my entry into it was really weird. So I could talk about that. I'd initially wanted to do the fellowship program, so I reached out to Dr. Gatt with a project, and then we worked together to create a proposal to apply to the fellowship. Um, and this was like the IRB wasn't even approved and things like that. So it was very like, let's apply to this. I didn't get the fellowship, so I did the training program anyways. But in that way, like I ensured that I was working with the project and the person I want to work with. I got nothing done essentially that summer. And the IRB is still not submitted. So I think it's the what you do if you're in this program is very much, I want to say what you make of it, but also it depends on what kind of project you do. If it's something to do with IRB and if it's not something approved yet, I would kind of prepare myself to do something else so you could still be productive. But if it's something like you still need to get IRB review for, like that's just, I don't know. Um, so I wasn't able to collect results that summer. The research was very, like I did have a lot of time to do other things, but that was because I couldn't do anything with the project itself. So I feel like if you want structure and results, you have to be very, very upfront about what project you're doing, what you're gonna do in that time span, because I don't think I was like that. And so I could put it on my CV, the program and like the presentation we did at the end, but I didn't do anything. I hope that makes sense.
And then if no one has anything coming to mind, the like last question that we kind of had pre-submitted was just like looking back at your summer, like what are some things that surprised you? Was it the type of experience that you wanted to have? And if you could like change anything or give advice to your M1 self, what would you say?
Wait, so the three things are what surprised you, and then what are the other two?
What surprised you, and then what you like, what advice you'd give to your M1 self, or anything you'd change about the program that you did.
Okay. So with NYU, what surprised me was, I don't know, I know it's like a great program and they can be very strict, like certain expectations, like they're very big on professionalism, but they also balance well with fun. So I thought that the program was going to be a lot more serious, but in our intro meeting, it was like, yeah, you guys like have the best time you want, like try these different things. Like it'll be just, if you got to study for something, just focus on that. Like this is very chill. Just like what they really care about is like you dress appropriately, look professional, and then show up on time for things. And that's that. I was surprised by, I wish I knew more ortho. Like I wish I knew more anatomy before doing the program. So you M1s are lucky because you already had some of that anatomy. We hadn't even had any exposure to it. So it was really hard. Like my person I was shadowing, he was always like drilling me and asking me questions. And I had to do a lot of um, other research or other efforts just to make sure that I could keep up because I didn't know anything at all. And then I learned that OrthoBullet is a really great resource. It tells you everything and breaks things down. And I think I only learned about that at the end of the summer. So in whatever ortho program you choose, I feel like OrthoBullet to me is like a great thing to do. Something that I would improve about the program, that was one thing I was going to tell them, like tell everybody about OrthoBullet because I didn't like going into the clinical settings and being totally clueless. And what's another thing? I wish it was very more straightforward with the mentorship. So like if there were a list of residents and they're like, hey, these are the ones you can reach out to. Like I personally feel really uncomfortable just reaching out to people because I feel like I'm annoying them. But it is a teaching hospital and a lot of them are receptive to your emails and your contacts. So you might as well go for it. So I guess I would tell my M1 self, like, don't be afraid, just send the email and see what happens. So yeah.
I can go. I think one thing that surprised me was like how quickly the summer went by. In my head, I was like, oh, 7 weeks, that's like 2 months. That's like a very decent amount of time, but it goes by really fast. I think, right after the summer cumulative is like the first group for the immersion program basically started the week after that. And like since then, I think the time just flew by. So that's why I think really knowing like how you want to be productive is like really important before going in. I think having some sort of plan or outline of what you want to get done is crucial. I do think I wished I started thinking about my summer earlier. I think like a lot of people said, a lot of the other summer programs, their deadlines had already passed by the time I looked them up or found them online. So, who knows what my summer could have looked like otherwise. And I think if you're considering the OSIG program here, I think it's a really good idea if you're like not sure if you want to do ortho at all. Like I've had no prior exposure to ortho in any capacity before starting M1, and people were talking about it and it seemed really interesting, but I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And during the year I wasn't able to shadow really much with the ortho department, and so this was a really good time for me to kind of spend 1 week dedicated to just the ortho department and shadowing the residents and the attendings and surgeries and doing journal clubs and all that stuff. So I think just kind of having that sense was good. And then I think one thing I would change, I think just prepare yourself. If you end up doing the OSIG program, like just prepare yourself for really long days. It is really tiring. I had a lot of fun though. You learn a lot. But I do wish it was longer. I think a lot of us really enjoyed our time and wish we could spend more time like doing everything that we did. But I think overall it was a really, really good experience.
I can go next. So I liked a lot about my program. The thing that surprised me the most was how much ortho knowledge and information I was able to absorb in such a short amount of time. Just from sitting in on fracture conferences, on the grand rounds, reading through patient charts, like you really do learn a lot. So it was a really great experience. And I also liked and honestly wasn't expecting this, but I also liked the fact that we were exposed to like the resident intern lifestyle, even though we were just doing like chart review. But like Evan said, it's important to experience, this kind of lifestyle. If you need to know if you can do this for the next 5 years and if you can handle it. So I wasn't expecting to get that part of the experience, but I did, which I really liked. So there's that. And then the one thing I disliked was the commute. On the way back, there's always traffic on I-95. So if you're not into driving, maybe pick a program that's a little bit closer to you. But the fact that I did do the program with Andrew. So this program does 2 medical students from Robert Wood and 2 from NJMS. So Andrew and I were both coming from New Brunswick, so we were able to carpool, so that made it a little bit easier. But yeah, the rush hour traffic on the way home was not fun. So yeah.
All right, I also missed a question earlier. So for programs that are outside of RWJ, did anyone after they submitted their application try to like reach out to people at that hospital or at that program to try to establish connections, or do you have any advice regarding like making your application stand out?
So your question is, if I reached out to people at the school, and then what can I do to what can you do to make your application stand out? So for the first point, I have just been trying to maintain my relationships with the person I was originally paired with. And then I also realized sometimes it's good to connect with the research fellows at an institution, because they're, of course, trying to get stuff done and trying to submit things quickly. So like I also have a relationship with a couple of the research fellows, which is helpful for future programs. And I think it's been helpful because now that I had that experience there, like there are a number of residents and other physicians who already know me. So I plan to reach out to other physicians just for like other opportunities. And then I recently went to like a regional conference. It's connected to SNMA. And they had some of the residents from NYU at the event. And after checking in, talking to them and saying, like, I want to do some shadowing with Dr. McLaurin. She's one of the trauma surgeons at NYU. They're like, yeah, sure, like reach out whenever. So I did. And I was able to shadow at the end of December. And if you just make positive relationships and you express your interest, they like to teach, they like to have people there sometimes, as long as you have that connection. So after shadowing that time, they're like, yeah, you should come back. So I'm just gonna keep in touch and keep showing up, and you have your name out there and such. But yeah, I think also having that experience gave me the confidence to reach out to people more. A lot of these physicians are willing to work with you, whether it be research or shadowing. So whether or not you get into the program, it makes it easier if you're a part of a program associated with the school, but if not, like there's still a possibility. As for what I did to make my application stand out, I think having a strong recommendation from Dr. Weber. I think my past experiences connected with what I've done before, like now, has been helpful. I honestly don't know how to answer that question, because I think that just it's not always about what you're saying, it's like how you say it. So like how you're selling yourself. So like finding a way to tactfully like tell your story. And I know that I was probably one of many students who talked about some ortho problem that I had. Like I talked about like a spine problem, but it's like the way that I talked about it and my motivations in the field of orthopedics that hopefully was really, I guess, resonated with them. But yeah, I think in combination, like my story in combination to all of my past experiences with my CV plus recommendation are all the things that made me have a really strong application.
All right, we could also open it up if any of the other students in the call have any questions for the panelists. All right, any parting words from the M2s about planning for the summer? Anything we can do?
Before we end, I had like a quick follow-up question for the applications, and Kike, you were just talking about that too. Did you focus on telling like your story of why are you motivated to go into ortho, or did you specifically like mention a project interest that you would want to work on? And that applies to everyone, that question.
So I'll just kind of say how I kind of like to write things. I started off with like kind of an anecdote and talked about, my kind of personal connection to orthopedics. So I guess I'll just tell y'all, like I have scoliosis, and that finding that out was really scary for me, because I swam competitively for how many, like 16 years, and I had like dreams for Olympic stuff, and I felt like if I had this issue, then I wouldn't be able to pursue them anymore. So that was kind of what I talked about. But I also like to discuss, I talked a lot about my experiences. So that was my personal connection. I talked about what I had recently seen and why that mattered to me. I didn't necessarily talk about what I wanted to research. However, like I think that there could be space for that, because I think it's always important to talk about what your motivations are and then what you could add to a certain space. So if your research interest is something that like, and what you're interested in pursuing is something that you feel you could add to a new like group or a space, that's something that is worth touching on. So.
I think, are we doing like open floor, or are we still answering that question?
Yeah, open floor.
Okay. I think what Kike said about building connections is probably one of the biggest takeaways I got from that summer. really specifically learning how to email people, correspond with different attendings, different residents. I think that was probably the biggest skill I learned. And I think being able to network like that can put you really ahead of the game. Um, and especially like working with what you have too. If you like met someone at a conference or you met someone at something, and I'll say it again, like I met someone at the Prairie Initiative that I went to, like just use that as like your door, as you're like in. And there's no harm in just sending that email. Um, Basically use as many doors as you have, being as resourceful as you can be, when it comes to the social capital you can get. Because I think, especially in such a field that's like, this is a pretty competitive field. I think what matters a lot is people you know, um, and what they can say about you as a person. Um, so I think focusing on that during the summer would be really good. I mean, I think that's something I would have liked to have done more of. Um, I had this whole like stretch of 7 weeks I could have done more emailing and stuff like that. And just like exploring the area, different institutions too. Um, yeah.
Awesome. And if any of their panelists have like parting words, they can speak up now. As you're doing that, I'm going to put a attendance survey and just like a survey for some feedback in the chat. So if the M1s can fill this out, it'll be how we track your attendance, then also get some feedback for doing future events and this panel again next year.
I think my parting words would just be, don't be stressed out about your summer plans. I think it's easy to hear like that we all did a lot of planning, obviously, because you're listening from the people who did a lot over the summer, research wise, clinical experience wise. But I truly like when I truly there are people in our class who did nothing but have fun, and that is okay. It is so understandable. You guys do a lot in M1, M2 goes by really fast, and just because you don't do research, or even if you thought that something was going to be productive and it didn't end up, in the result that you expected, you have time, like your M2 year, to do other things and find that research and build those connections. So just don't worry too much if you guys feel like your summer isn't going to pan out in the way that you had hoped. Everything will be okay.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. I think don't stress out too much about this. If you have the opportunity to do something, great. If not, enjoy it. Enjoy the 2 months that you get. Like for me, that's the reason that I did only the immersion program and I think that was the only thing I really applied to, was because I wanted to enjoy part of the summer. So it's a good way to get that week and really dive in for a solid week. You're there pretty much all day the entire time. And then you do get a little bit of time to relax. So I would just like over the next week or two, take some time to figure out what you want to get out of the summer, or if you just want to enjoy it. Just because those deadlines do come up quick for some of these programs, but if you ultimately decide that you just want to take the summer to relax, there's no problem with that. That's, sometimes I wish I did, but I definitely had a good time with the summer immersion program. So if you're thinking about something short, I recommend that for sure.
I feel like everyone should apply to the Robert Wood Summer Immersion Program. Like in the list of things you want to apply to. I don't know. I feel like it's a week, you know, and you'll likely get it. And if you do have other plans too, it's just a week. I feel like I just highly recommend it. It was such a good program.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to the M2s for coming out tonight. I know again, once again, you're like very busy. If you guys need anything, I think you can find their emails through the RWJ portal, but thanks everyone.